This is a 1989 Daytona ES. This particular Daytona came with a 100 horsepower 2.5 liter inline 4, though options range from a 2.2 liter naturally aspirated engine to a 2.5 liter turbo, making 150 horsepower. And the Turbo 2 2.2 liter intercooled engine was also an option, which also made 174 horsepower. That's about the same horsepower of the 318 5.2 liter at the time by Dodge/Chrysler. This car ran from 1984 to 1993. Being its last year, it came out with the most powerful of the engines, a Turbo 3 224 horsepower dual overhead cam 24 valve engine. To this day, these cars are very popular for modifying and racing. And as I said before, this is a 1989 Dodge Daytona ES model. I bought this car to fix up for a family member of mine for the very first car. I bought the car for $600 with no interior, no fuel tank, no fuel pump, and barely any paint. I went from the inside out to rebuild this car. My father and I almost redid the whole car in about 2 months, repainting most of it to factory color, fixing the headlights, replumbing the engine. As all the vacuum lines were shot, one even had a bolt in it. We redid the headliner and completely put the interior back to factory. One of the easiest yet frustrating part was redoing the radiator, which we swapped out from the copper one to an aluminum one for about $100, which made the car run a lot better as it was overheating for no reason, until we took the radiator off and figured out it's full of rust and dirt. The only thing this car really came with was the interior, pretty much dismantled and put in a nice bundle in the back. Not even the back seats were in there. They were just kind of shoved in the corner of the back. The air filter, the fuel tank, the fuel pump, just kind of all sitting in the back there. Absolutely no interior was in it. So after 2 days after buying the car, we stuck the fuel pump into the tank and then shoved the tank into the car and got it running 2 days afterwards, but not in very good condition. After all that work and giving it to my family member, it's back. Only 3 months after handing off the keys, the engine is dead. After taking off the oil pan, it's clear to see that it had spun a bearing.
Some anti-vibration thing. I bet there's like a set of counterweights that sit a counterweight in there. Beautiful.
Now, that's not all bad. I could have just rebuilt the engine for about $50 because the crankshaft and bearings, they're super cheap for this car, although I don't know how good the quality are considering they're from probably China. But what's the fun in shoving back a 100 horsepower, 136 foot-pound engine that's a 4-cylinder? If I'm going to do that much work, I might as well go all out. Yeah, though not all out in the sense of if I should shove a V8 in it, rear-wheel drive it, or put a 2.4 liter turbo into it. I don't know. Don't really like turbos that much. I just like torque. I'm a naturally aspirated kind of guy, but maybe in the future this could go to a turbo. I'm even kind of thinking of a supercharger, depending on how much work it is and whatnot. After doing much research on what engine I would want to put back into it, I bounced around from putting a 2.4 liter dual overhead cam from like a SRT4 Neon, or just taking a Neon engine and putting a turbo on it, yada yada yada. After looking around the forums, I found quite a few swaps. There's people swapped 3 liter in it from a 2.5, 3.5 liter twin turbo called the Night Moves, which is freaking ridiculous, but awesome at the same time. I came to the conclusion that I'm going to put a 3.3 liter / 3.8 liter from Chrysler into it, as they pretty much use all the same mounts and they're not too hard to program. I've had personal experience with this engine. My family owns a lot of these vans. Pretty much for 2 or 3 generations, we've had the 3 liter, 3.3 liter, 3.8 Chrysler engines in them. It's got a very compact design with its overhead valve design. It has a fairly good amount of horsepower, but the biggest seller for me was that it's a large amount of torque. The engine I will be putting in it, swapping into it more or less, is from a 1998 Dodge Caravan Sport with a 3.8 liter. That year was the year that Chrysler upped the compression, meaning this engine produces 180 horsepower and 240 feet-pounds of torque. almost double the horsepower and torque of the small puny 2.5 liter. And hopefully I'll get similar gas mileage. I would hope so, considering that the car is 1,000 pounds less and pretty much get the same gas mileage with a 2.5 as this 3.8 liter does in a 4,000 pound vehicle. One thing I must add is that none of this would be possible with the help of Icecoldcanuck. I really don't know how to spell your name, but hopefully I didn't butcher it too much. From TurboDodge. And Clutch 2 from Facepunch, who even helped me months ago redo the lights because the headlights weren't popping up. Much of the swap will be done with the research and modifications. Icecoldcanuck from TurboDodge did, swapping his 1990 Daytona from a 2.5 liter to a 3.3 liter for his son. A link to the video and thread will be in the description, so you guys can hopefully learn from that too. Hopefully this all goes well. I have lots of work to do, and it may be slowed down by weather as I don't have a garage and I'm pretty much doing this all in my yard. So if a video doesn't come out, or if I don't post anything on the thread, my build threads or Facebook or whatever, be patient. I'm pretty much limited by the weather. I've had the van with me for about a week now, and it's been raining nonstop as I live in Missouri. It's got the same weather as UK. It just rains, pouring down for no reason. 5 minutes later, it'll be 80 degrees out, hot, and then just immediately start pouring down rain again. It's very bipolar weather. Thanks for all the help from the users of Facepunch, TurboDodge, and the members of the Dodge Daytona group on Facebook. Without you guys' help, I probably wouldn't have enough research to get this done, nor even know where to start. And I'll keep on reading things on the forums. If you guys have any suggestions, please post them. I take everything into consideration. I mean, I know a lot of you guys will probably say, why didn't you go to a turbo motor or do a turbo swap? Well, I'm just not ready to do turbos yet. They're kind of hard to do. I mean, not really, but I don't like to do plumbing. If anything, I'll probably do a supercharger on a build. So this set one time might have a 3.8 liter supercharger off of either a turbo coupe, a Ford turbo coupe, which also had a 3.8 liter, or the 3800 SC. Probably a second version of it, which was a GM product. They had a supercharger on it. Since they have a similar displacement, and a lot of users have swapped these over to a 3-liter Mitsubishi engine, which is also in the Daytona, I'll look into see how much work it will take, and hopefully if it doesn't take too much fabrication, I can just swap it over and then probably run on low boost, because as far as I know, these things probably can't handle over probably 4 pounds. Don't remember who told me, but there was a thread or something about turbocharging a 3.8 liter, and it pretty much exploded after about 8 minutes or something on the dyno. Not sure, but I do know that Chrysler at one point in time had a concept vehicle as the, I think it was the Dodge Caravan ACR based off the Viper. It had a Viper hood. It was a 3.8 liter with a supercharger on it, making something like 300 horsepower, which is kind of ridiculous for a van, but probably not today's standards. I'm sure Hondas have a 300 horsepower engine or something in their vans. I don't know. I don't do Hondas. So anyway, thanks guys, and be patient.